All-Star games is becoming a major problem for the NBA. There will be some changes. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 If we care enough.
Yeah, election time's coming. Who you gonna vote for? Yeah, if I was president, I'd get elected on Friday, assassinated on Saturday, buried on Sunday, they go back to work on Monday. If I was president, if I was president, if I was president, yeah. Instead of spending billions on the war, I can use that money so I can feed the poor. Cause I know some so poor. When it rains, that's when they shower, scream and fight the power. That's when the vulture devours. If I was president.
The sounds of Wyclef Jean on Tavis Smiley, If I Were President. And y'all don't want to know what I would do if I were president. We won't talk about that. Today is President's Day, and the show must go on, as they say. What a spirited conversation in our first hour on President's Day with Bill Press. And I'm pleased in this hour to have a conversation with noted labor journalist Hamilton Nolan about his new book, provocative new book called The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Battle for the Soul of Labor. Hamilton Nolan, good to have you on the program. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Tavis. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
My great honor to have you on, particularly on President's Day. A lot to get to in this book. Joe Biden has branded himself as the best president ever for labor. Bill Press and I were just talking in our first hour about this poll that comes out every year, this survey of American historians, and they put Joe Biden at 14 of the best presidents we've ever had. That poll out today, and Donald Trump is in dead last place at 50. So that, again, is an annual poll, as you well know. In case you missed it, Bill Press and I were talking about that earlier. Joe Biden sits at 14 of our best presidents, and Donald Trump at the bottom. Speaking of Bill Press, let me start our conversation sort of where he and I kind of ended ours, because it weaves quite nicely. So the subtitle of your book, as I said at the very top of our show today, mentioning that you were going to be on, Hamilton, which I love, is Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. The struggle for the soul of labor. I love that particular phraseology. And so Bill Press and I were just talking about the state of our souls. And we were talking specifically, just give me a second, I'll set this up and I'll pass the mic to you. We were talking about Tucker Carlson and that interview with Vladimir Putin that came out a couple of days ago. Bill Press and Tucker Carlson back in the day were co-hosts on a couple of programs on CNN, of course, most famously Crossfire. And I asked him, what happened to Tucker Carlson, Bill, over the years? I've known Tucker for a long time. Bill's known him longer. What happened to him? And Bill essentially said, the Tucker that you and I knew then, Tavis, is not the Tucker of today. He has essentially sold his soul. $15 million can do that to you. But he essentially sold his soul. And I was about to say to Bill, which I would now say to you, that people have made a lot about, the Obama era and my pushback on Barack Obama that got me in a lot of trouble here and there. I still stand behind all of that because I never called him out of his name, never talked about his mama. I just tried to hold him accountable to the things he said he was going to do, and I stand firm on that. But in our private conversations, most people don't know this, but it'll be in my next book. But Obama and I had private conversations all throughout that campaign. I would call him, he would call me, because we've known each other for years. And I closed every conversation by saying to him, whatever you do, Barack, do not sell, do not surrender, and do not let them steal your soul. Don't sell it, don't surrender it, and don't let them steal your soul. Because once they have your soul, nothing else really matters. Here you come today now with this book with a subtitle about the struggle for the soul of labor. So I want to start on that note. Tell me, just broadly speaking, and we'll dig into it as we move through this hour, but what is this struggle about for the soul of labor? Why that phraseology?
Well, for the entire history of the United States labor movement, there's kind of been a large-scale battle between sort of two factions of the world of organized labor. One faction sort of sees unions, labor unions, organized labor as an adjunct of the business world. So in other words, a labor union is sort of almost the equivalent of a company, but for workers. Mm-hmm. And it's a philosophy that a lot of people refer to as business unionism. And the other sort of faction of the labor movement for more than a century has been people with the idea that there's kind of an ongoing battle or struggle between the forces of capital and money and the forces of labor, or you could even say the forces of humanity. And the role of the labor movement, is to organize all of the world's workers, and that our job is not done until we organize all the world's workers and give them the power that they need to stand up in a capitalist system and wield power for themselves. And so, when you look at organized labor today, which has been in a long, long decline dating back to the middle of the 20th century. Unions have been under attack since World War II and even before, but union power in America hit its peak in the middle of the 20th century. And not coincidentally, we had the greatest shared prosperity in the history of this country during the decades when unions were very strong. 1 in 3 American workers was a union member in the middle of the 20th century. Today, that figure is 1 in 10. Only 1 in 10 American workers are union members today. So we've seen a long 70-year decline in union power. And in the labor movement today, there are still these factions sort of people who are more or less willing to accept the large-scale decline of labor and say we just need to tend to the members that we have and take care of the people we have. And then the other faction that says, look, our job is to organize everybody, and we need to act with urgency to turn around this decline of the labor movement and give this powerful tool to everybody out there that doesn't have it. We
will talk more when we come forward about those two sides in this frame, in this fight, if you will, for the soul of labor. We'll talk more about that 70-year decline. Historians put Biden at 14 of our best presidents. I want to ask Hamilton Nolan when we come forward his view on Biden and labor specifically, and a great deal more to talk about. I love his phrase, the forces of humanity. There's a lot to unpack in this hour. We got a lot to talk about. I look forward to doing it when we come forward. Hamilton Nolan, author of the new book, The Hammer, on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. With eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Hey, I have a secret. I use Secret Whole Body Deodorant because more than just my armpits stink.
Oh, can I use it where my bra rubs under my...
Oh, yeah.
And what about down there? You know, my...
Totally. 4 out of 5 gynecologists would recommend it. So I tried it, and now I get 72 hours of freshness from my pits to my...
Ooh, I love that it's a spray.
Me too. And it comes in sticks and creams, too. Go get your Secret Whole Body Deodorant.
If you're looking for the most epic place on Earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. Then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes and a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Hamilton Nolan, who's author of the powerful new book called The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. I'm honored to have him on for the hour. We got a lot to talk about. So, Hamilton, let me start with this. I mentioned earlier that given that today is President's Day, we get this survey every year around this time where our nation's most prominent historians sound off on from 1 to 50 these days, the best and worst who've occupied the Oval Office. And they put Joe Biden in terms of what he has accomplished. That's what the list is, not popularity, but in terms of what they got done. They put Joe Biden at 14 on this list, Donald Trump in dead last. So I want to just kind of reframe the question, if I can, for you, not just about what Joe Biden has gotten done, but when it comes to Biden and labor, would he be on your list at 14, higher or lower?
You know, he calls himself the most pro-labor president, in American history.
He does indeed. Yeah.
I don't know if he's the most in American history, but he's certainly the most pro-labor president in the last 50 years. And even when you look at Democratic presidents, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Obama, none of them were very willing to spend a lot of political capital on labor issues. They all certainly collected the support of unions, but didn't really do a lot substantively to help unions, whereas Biden has really leaned into that. Especially on the regulatory side, the NLRB and things like that. So he is a very, very top-tier pro-labor president. That said, it's a very low bar when it comes to American presidents. So there's a lot more that he could be doing. So
again, this is getting rich or getting good, as we say around here, because these themes that were raised in hour one are being raised again in hour two. I always want to connect these dots and give you a chance to sound off. So one of the things we were talking about earlier in today's program was about accountability, and I'm big on accountability. I believe there is honor in being held accountable. Nobody wants to be in a relationship with your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, at work, anywhere. Nobody wants to be in a business relationship. Nobody wants to be in any relationship where the other side doesn't agree to be held accountable. That ain't a relationship. That's exploitation. So there's got to be accountability in every relationship, lest it become, as I said, exploitation. So here's my question. How does labor hold the president accountable? I'm talking about Democratic presidents. You just mentioned that every Democratic president leaned into labor enough to get their vote. They wanted their support. And the answer is always the same. We just discussed this in hour one. Well, you don't want this other guy. I mean, I'm not the best on labor, perhaps. I can't agree with you on every issue, but you don't want Donald Trump being your president. It's always they scare you, and they use this line that it's the other guy that you don't want in, so you might as well vote for me. So it's a sort of oftentimes a sort of lesser of two evils. In that kind of frame, I don't know how the Democrat president ever gets held accountable. So I ask you specifically, how has labor been able to hold any Democratic president truly accountable, since they know that's where the guy running is Democrat, the nominee knows you're going to support him anyway. So how do you hold him accountable?
Right. Yeah, this has always been the struggle of labor in a two-party electoral system, right? The Democrats say, what are you going to do, vote for a Republican? Republicans want to basically kill unions altogether, and Democrats will say, well, we're not going to do anything to help you, but we won't try to kill you. So it comes down to that. I mean, the answer, and organized labor has not been very good at this over the years, but the answer is the job of the labor movement is to spend their money organizing workers and giving those workers unions. And by doing that, the workers themselves get their own source of power. And so, the long-term answer is they take all the money that they're giving to the Democratic Party and spend that money on organizing new unions. And then you allow workers to have the power for themselves to make those political decisions. And you force the politicians to come to us and cater to the needs of working people, rather than having working people always bend the knee to the politicians, hoping that they won't persecute the labor movement.
So what does labor get for that then? Ultimately, if you struggle with holding the other guy accountable, or the Democrat specifically, we're talking President's Day here. So if you struggle holding the Democrat candidate accountable, or the president accountable, and he knows, at least he up until this point, no she's, he knows that you ain't going nowhere. What has labor truly benefited from over the last 70 years? And I say over the last 70 years because you made the point earlier, Hamilton Nolan, which you bring out in your book, The Hammer, that labor's been on a downslide for 70 years. 70 years ago, 1 in 3 American citizens were labor members. Now it's 1 in 10. So over that 70-year period, if we had the time, we could tick off all the Democratic presidents over that 70-year period. We just mentioned Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton in this contemporary moment, but we could do that over these 70 years. So how is it that all these Democrats showed up in the White House over that 70-year period, and labor remained consistently in a 7-decade decline?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's evidence that the philosophy that organized labor and institutions like the AFL-CIO have pursued for that entire period, which is that organized labor will get stronger by getting our allies elected in the electoral political system, who will then change all the bad labor laws and help out organized labor. That philosophy has failed, and it has failed decade after decade after decade through Republican and Democratic presidential administrations, right? So it's time to pull back and say we need to reframe the question of where working people's political power comes from, because working people's political power in America does not come from having a Democrat in the White House. Having a Democrat in the White House allows us to be slightly less persecuted, certainly, but it hasn't turned around that decline of union members. And so the labor movement, again, needs to refocus its priorities, its vision, and its resources, and its money and its spending on organizing new union members. We need to organize millions of working people in America, which is, a task that is possible but has not really been pursued in a serious way. And if we do that, if you build up the strength of organized labor, the political side will take care of itself, because where you see really strong unions in cities and states that do have really powerful unions, those unions are able to make politicians cater to them because they have a natural source of power. Where you don't have strong unions, that's when you see institutions running and catering to politicians, hoping that we won't be persecuted by the other party.
You mentioned AFL-CIO, and to my surprise, I didn't expect to see this, but you have a pretty strong critique of AFL-CIO. Everybody's talking about, again, we discussed this in our first hour, about the joyful outcome of Sean Fain and his work at UAW last year and all the success they had, the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild. As I've said many times, this audience has heard me say it, repeatedly, that labor, I think, should have been the person of the year last year, not Taylor Swift, with all due respect. Labor just had an amazing year last year. And I think not enough has been said about that or written about that. We can talk about that. But at the end of the day, your critique of AFL-CIO was pretty shocking for me. So for those who have not as yet had a chance to read the book, but will when they get a chance, it's called The Hammer. Tell me about your critique of AFL-CIO.
Yeah, so I mean, as you touched on, there's tons of great examples of great unions all throughout America, and we saw last year the strikes in Hollywood. My own union, the Writers Guild, waged a successful strike in Hollywood. The United Auto Workers waged a big successful strike. So you can see many, many individual examples of really inspiring things that unions are doing in America. But when you talk about the labor movement as a whole, you look at the AFL-CIO, which is not a union itself, but is a coalition of 60 major unions. It sort of sits at the center of organized labor in America. And as an institution, its overriding job is to protect the power of working people in America. And it has presided over this 70-year decline in union power that we touched on earlier. And the AFL-CIO is really the institution that has pursued the same philosophy that we just talked about of leaning into electoral politics rather than leaning into the idea of organizing new workers. The AFL-CIO has a lot of resources, has a lot of political connections. It has infrastructure all over the country, but it has not built a realistic system for giving regular people access to organizing resources so that they can organize. Public opinion polls tell us right now that labor unions are more popular than they've been in 60 years. People want what labor unions have to offer, but only 10% of people have a union. Why is that? There's a major breakdown between public sentiment and the number of people that actually have unions. And it's not just a matter of hostile labor laws. It's also a matter of the AFL-CIO and all of the institutions in organized labor have not built the infrastructure that's necessary to give everybody access to union organizers and unions of their own.
So tell me about that infrastructure that is lacking. What would just imagine a world for me where that infrastructure does in fact exist? What would it look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, really what we need is just an open door to organized labor. I mean, anybody out there listening who doesn't have a union, which is most people, when you think about the idea of if you wanted to have a union in your workplace, would you know how to do it? Most people wouldn't know how to do it. And if you said you want to get in touch with a union organizer, how do you do it? Most people don't know how to get in touch with a union organizer. What they would probably do would be to call a local union in their area. That union might not be the correct union for their industry. If they did call one of the national unions, they would have probably a very hard time getting in touch with a union organizer. There's just not a basic level of infrastructure that allows people to easily and consistently access union organizers and the resources they need to organize those unions. So, I mean, it's a shame that Taco Bell can put fast food outlets in every community in America that give a consistent customer experience, but the labor movement can't do that. It's just very hard for people to access what we have, and that's just a matter of spending money and resources to create that basic infrastructure in every community that acts as a front door to organized labor for regular people to come in and learn how to get unions.
Let me pivot for a second and talk specifically about media. You mentioned earlier that you are a member of a union. I am as well, and most people, frankly, many people certainly who cover the news media belong to unions themselves. This irony just hit me. So we belong to unions, even as we cover labor unions in our work, but we do, I think, a pretty bad job of covering unions. For example, years ago, as you know, being a scholar in this lane, years ago, most major papers in this country had a labor page. There was literally a page in the paper dedicated to labor. Always a business page. And in the papers today, you still have the business section. Got all these business magazines. I could run the list for the next 20 minutes of all the business magazines on the newsstand. Again, years ago, there were labor pages in our local and national newspapers. Somewhere along the way, that went away for labor. So you got all these business magazines, all this business focus, but even those of us who are in the unions, as we cover unions as part of our job in the media, I think do a pretty bad job of that. I'll digress for the moment, but give me your read of the way the media has treated or maltreated, covered or not covered labor in this country, unless and until they go out on strike.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I totally agree with you, and I say all the time, every newspaper has a business section, and labor is nothing but the business section from the perspective of a human being instead of from the perspective of a business. And most people are not going to be a CEO of a business or a hedge fund manager, but almost everybody is a worker. So labor is actually a topic that relates much more closely to the lives of 99% of the people who are reading the media. It's true that labor journalism has had a big decline. Certainly throughout my career it has, and it's gone down to a pretty low level. But, as a silver lining to that, at least, since over the past 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a lot of active union drives within the media and at a lot of media outlets, including the LA Times and many, many others. And that has kind of inspired a new generation of journalists to be more excited about labor issues, I think. So we are having a little bit of a renaissance in terms of attention being paid to labor issues, but we could definitely use a lot more.
When we come forward, continuing our conversation about this book, The Hammer, I've got a critique of Sean Fain. I've got a critique of the UAW. I got a critique of unions across the board when it comes specifically, wait for it, to people of color. There's no doubt in my mind, or your mind for that matter, that so many people of color, to the extent that 1 out of 3 used to be a union member in this country, now 1 out of 10, still in the most multiracial, multi-ethnic America, multicultural America ever, I still have a problem with the ways in which I think labor oftentimes treats members of color, and even Sean Fain. I have a strong critique of Sean Fain, something he did that kind of troubled me and bothered me during this most recent campaign, around which they were very successful with the automakers, but he rubbed me the wrong way on something. And I'll explain that when we come forward and continue our dialogue with Hamilton Nolan, the author of the new book, The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. Pleased to have him right now on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. 2 Minnesota police officers and a paramedic were shot and killed while responding to a domestic abuse call early Sunday morning in a Minneapolis suburb. According to the Star Tribune, law enforcement sources confirmed the suspected gunman died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Cops say the suspect had several guns and fired from multiple points in the house. In Georgia, a Gwinnett County father and son are helping steer a large book donation event in celebration of Black History Month. Michael and Matthew Carson have co-authored a handful of books about African American history, but now they're giving away a lot more. The Gwinnett Daily Post reports they plan to be on hand at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights this upcoming Saturday to give away 1,000 books. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The best news out of NBA All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis came from LeBron James. Before Sunday's All-Star game, LeBron said he hopes to finish his career with the Lakers. A couple of days after the February 8 trade deadline, management for the Lakers and Golden State confirmed that they had casual talks about a trade that would have sent LeBron to the Warriors. LeBron said Sunday he was unaware of those discussions. LeBron did not play in the second half of the All-Star game. He's still undergoing treatment for his sore left ankle. Look for NBA Commissioner Adam Silver to do some serious soul-searching about the All-Star game. The game has become a joke. 397 points were scored, 211 by the Eastern Conference. The lack of competitive effort by the players in recent All-Star games is becoming a major problem for the NBA. There will be some changes. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Robert Half research indicates 9 out of 10 hiring managers are having difficulty hiring. Robert Half is here to help. Their recruiting professionals use proprietary AI to connect businesses with highly skilled talent. At Robert Half, they know talent. Visit roberthalf.com today.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of this light of ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This light of ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This light of ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey. Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of
It's game day at Jim's house, and the spread is impressive.
Mike's already done some damage with the hot wings, and now he's dropping back and going deep for another slice of pizza.
I sure hope he brought the Pepto.
Mike knows that Pepto-Bismol provides fast 5-symptom relief from unexpected stomach upsets. He's no rookie.
The way he's throwing back those nachos, he's the GOAT.
Be ready for game day with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea,
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
The thing no one tells you about periods is that your flow changes every day, and so should your tampon size. Tampax has 5 absorbencies to match your changing flow. If it hurts to remove, go down a size. If it leaks, go up a size. Only Tampax has a leak guard braid to help give you up to 100% leak and odor-free protection. All-day comfort and protection for under $5 a month. Based on average U.S. consumer usage at manufacturer suggested price. However, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. Excludes 8-count packs.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
More of Tavis Smiley and Hamilton Nolan, author of the new book, The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. So here's my critique of labor specifically, Hamilton, when it comes to people of color. In no particular order, and I could do this all day if I had the time, but you'll take my point on just a few quick examples. My overarching argument is that to this day, and I've been covering these issues for a while in my career, nowhere near at the expert level that you have, but as a member of the media, we discuss these issues all the time. And my view has always been, and sadly in 2024 remains the same, that leadership does not reflect membership. That the leadership of these unions, frankly, do not reflect the membership. I mentioned earlier, we live now in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever. And I still don't see across the board that kind of representation at the leadership level of membership. It's why we all get excited when there's a black woman or a black man who is about to assume some position they've never had before in the history of labor. Well, we're excited for all these African-American first because they've been left out. So they make up the membership, and their dues go to the membership, to the organization, but they're not reflected across the board in the leadership. That's my overarching critique. A couple other things, and I'll shut up. For example, here in Los Angeles, the whole world heard that tape of those Latino leaders. You know where I'm going, denigrating African Americans on that tape. They weren't just Latinos, but one of them, Ron Herrera, was a major labor leader, meeting with Latino politicos about how to push back against black progress, how to cut black folk out of political power. That guy was a union leader and the most powerful one in Los Angeles. So now you got this black-brown conflict even in the labor movement. That troubles me because black people are increasingly, I think, coming up oftentimes on the short stick of that conversation. And then Sean Fain specifically. Sean Fain got a lot of love. He deserved it. Let me just be clear. Sean Fain and I are from the same hometown, Kokomo, Indiana. I was born in Mississippi, but I grew up in Indiana. So we literally are from the same hometown in Kokomo, Indiana. Here's my point. I watched Sean Fain do all these interviews, all the exposure, and I cannot find any interviews that Sean Fain did with media of color. Talking specifically now about black media. Now, we're all up in the unions. You know, these auto manufacturers are based in Detroit, but Sean Fain's people did not feel it important enough for him to talk to black media outlets, even given what his membership looks like. And it's not just me. And my point is this. I'm Tavis Smiley. I'm from his hometown. And I didn't get Sean Fain on this radio program. So it's not about me. I'm just making the point that if I can't pull it off, I see why others didn't pull it off. But the point is that we're not even factored into. It's the same way I feel about politicians. I've been threatening here lately to run a list, certainly in Los Angeles where I'm based. This program is heard nationally. But I've been threatening to come out with a public list of all these people running for office who want the black vote but won't advertise on black media. That's troubling me. I digress on that point for now. That's my read from the outside looking in. You are an expert. This is your field. You're the author of this book, The Hammer. Talk to me broadly speaking about the labor movement and people of color.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that you're correct. And if you look at the entire history of the labor movement in America, racism and sexism have always been serious issues. And you know, one of the good qualities of the labor movement is that it reflects, or ideally will reflect, everybody in society. And of course, one of the downsides that goes along with that means that all of the problems and prejudices that exist in the wider society will also exist within organized labor.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not a magic wand, unfortunately. And as you touched on, I think very correctly, at the leadership level, this is very, very true. Because when you look at the broader membership of labor unions in America, actually, black people and people of color and women of color are all overrepresented as union members. So the labor movement actually at the membership level is very strong on that, but at the leadership level, it's not, as you say. And so that's going to be an ongoing struggle for organized labor, which, should be leading on these issues, right? We should be at the forefront of these issues of equality. This is a movement that is based on the idea of equality is at the heart of the labor movement. And so I think you're absolutely right, and I think Shawn Fain should give you an interview.
I appreciate that. But you take my larger point. Despite what I've just said, and in spite of what you've just said, you still argue in this book, The Hammer, in a variety of ways, that unions are what you call laboratories of democracy. So how can what you just said be true? How can what I just said be true? How can these critiques be true, and yet you still see unions as laboratories of democracy?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. First of all, the greatest thing about a union is that it's not just you solving a single issue. It is giving power to people to be able to address issues on their own. So it's not it's not just a single issue based movement. It is a movement that puts power in the hands of regular people to be able to do whatever they want with it. In terms of democracy, we talk a lot about, especially going into this election cycle, about we need to save democracy from Trump. The reality is that most people in America do not experience in their day-to-day lives democracy in action. You're born, you're a child, you don't experience democracy in a family setting. You go to school, you're told what to do. You grow up, you get a job, you're told what to do at work. Where are you experiencing democracy? And if you look at electoral politics, it's really a very top-down enterprise that is controlled by powerful people and not by regular people. Unions, labor unions, are one of the only major institutions in America that actually operate democratically and actually give regular people the ability to democratically influence a powerful institution. And so I truly believe that if many, many more people were able to join unions and have unions of their own and run unions and influence unions, that is a firsthand lived experience of democracy and democratic power that most people just never get to access in their entire lives. And it changes people for the better. And so, again, like giving people, many, many more people, the ability to experience that is going to evolve America and the American electorate in a positive direction in more ways than one.
That raises two questions, which I'll pose now and get Hamilton Nolan's response to when we come forward. The first is, what is the price that the demos, that America, the Republic, what is the price that we pay long-term if union density continues to decline? You mentioned earlier we've been on a 70-year slide. Labor had a great year last year, but is that an outlier? Is that an outlier year, or is that some wave for the future? And if it's not a wave of the future, then what is the impact to the nation of union density continuing to decline? And back to that earlier frame that you put us in about the fact that there's this fight inside of labor. Some believe we got to take care of those who are our members, and that's where our fight ought to be. And others are arguing that, no, we have to prioritize putting resources into new organizing. For those who are resisting the latter, what is that about? Our guest is Hamilton Nolan, author of the book, The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. And you're listening to him right now on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
This fight inside of labor, Hamilton Nolan, that you mentioned earlier, those who are the opinion that we got to take care of our own, never mind the 70-year decline in unions in this country, and those who believe that now is the time to prioritize putting resources into new organizing. You sort of explained earlier what that fight is about. But I'm wondering what the resistance specifically is to new organizing. I mean, if you had a great year like labor had last year, and every poll, study, survey I read suggests that labor, as you mentioned earlier, is more popular now than ever. I understand the disconnect between those who believe in labor and those who actually have opportunities to be a part of labor unions. I get that disconnect. But what's the fear about? Why are they pushing back on this notion of organizing and going, as they say, go big or go home? Why not go big?
Right. Well, it's sort of a result of the basic mechanism of unions, which is they're funded by member dues. And any organization that is funded by member dues, there's sort of a natural level of pressure to take care of the members who are paying the dues. It's kind of like a suburban neighborhood where the taxpayers are saying, why should we pay for the people who live across town? This is our neighborhood. We want to keep our neighborhood nice. And unions can have some of that same style in the sense that there's a natural pressure on union presidents and union leaders to take care of their own members. And of course, it's important to take care of the union members. That's the role of the union. But when you talk about new organizing and looking outside of the union to the 90% of people who don't have unions, the impetus for that is a level of ideology and a level of belief that it's our responsibility as a labor movement to take care of those people who aren't our members. And unfortunately, there's a number of union leaders who don't necessarily have that ideology so much. And to them, new organizing is expensive and it's uncertain and it's a little bit of a hassle. And so it tends to fall by the wayside more.
Sounds a bit myopic, though.
Well, it's extremely myopic, and especially when we're in this time of 70-year decline. And I often, compare it to climate change in the sense that it's an issue that gets a little bit worse every year, but it gets worse slowly enough that it can be ignored usually, and it has been ignored for a long time. And if you're a union leader and your union goes from 1 million members to 500,000 members, you're still going to have a job. Your job will be fine. 500,000 members is enough to give a union president a good job and a good salary. But of course, from the big picture and from the perspective of the entire working class, it's a slow-moving disaster.
I love your analogy of climate change. We have a major climate campaign initiative that's jumping off here at my home station in Los Angeles, and I love that frame that climate change gets worse every year, a little bit worse every year, but it gets worse slowly enough that people can continue to ignore it until it's too late, right? Until it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the problem. When we come forward, I want to put the following to Hamilton Nolan before I lose him at the top of the hour, and that is what happens to our experiment in democracy. I call it an experiment in democracy. If union density continues to decline, if they continue to ignore the unions, the need to organize and to expand and to grow, what price does the nation pay for that? You made the point pretty strongly earlier that as goes unions, so goes the nation. That's what I took from it, at least. We'll talk about that part when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
I started vaping my freshman year of high school, mostly because all my friends had vapes. I wanted to fit in with them and look cool and be a part of everything that they were doing. The hardest part about quitting for me was all my friends still hitting their vapes right next to me. It was really frustrating and confusing when I was trying to quit because in my head I knew I didn't want to do it anymore, but for some reason my brain still wanted it.
No quit story is the same. For free support, text Kick Nicotine to 66819 today.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Hamilton Nolan, author of the new book, The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. You essentially argue in the book, Hamilton, that as goes unions, so goes the nation, so goes our democracy. So I close by asking what happens to the republic in the years to come if union density continues to decline, continues to go down.
Yeah, it's something I don't like to contemplate, but I'm glad that you brought up union density because it's such an important measurement and it doesn't get talked about enough. But union density is really the key to, I think, underlying measures of equality in America. You know, we live in an age of inequality, especially since the Ronald Reagan era. America has been in a crisis of inequality that has been rising and rising and rising. We're a very rich country. The question is not whether America is going to be rich. The question is who is going to have all that wealth. And when union density is high, the wealth is shared widely. And when union density is low, the wealth concentrates at the top. And so if we allow union density to continue to decline, we're going to see more and more concentration of wealth at the top of the income pyramid. It also has extremely unhealthy impacts on our political system, because we live in a country where money buys political power. And so as union density continues to decline, more political power flows to the interests of the wealthy and away from the interests of working people. So it's not something that I like to contemplate, but it's something that anybody can do to help by joining the union.
But at the end of the day, though, that what you just described is not sustainable. And when I talk about inequality, of course, you talk about income inequality, economic immobility, and poverty. All three have to be in the frame, right? Income inequality, economic immobility, and poverty. You got to discuss all three. But to your point, if what you've just described continues to happen, ultimately, that is not sustainable in a so-called democracy.
I absolutely agree. It's not sustainable. And at some point we will hit a wall. And, I think the rise of Donald Trump was maybe the first signs of us hitting the wall and it, sort of a symptom of people not believing in the idea of American democracy, people giving up on the idea of democracy. And part of the reason people do that is because they don't see democracy in their lives. They don't see the benefits of democracy. And again, a union is a place where you can build democracy from the ground up, and you teach people about what democracy can truly be, and you give people the power to actually affect the political system at large. So I see it as the antidote in many ways to the underlying symptoms that fuel the rise of Trump and fascism and all those things that we're seeing right now.
Here we are at the end of an amazing conversation with Hamilton Nolan about the struggle for the soul of labor. And in the last minute, he puts out a powerful, powerful point that we could spend hours dissecting, and that is for those who support Donald Trump, and over 70 million Americans did last time, it's hard to not read, given the way he has shown up and has promised to show up if he's reelected. It's hard not to see that vote for him as a vote for giving up on democracy. It's just hard to separate those two things. That if you believe this guy is going to do what he said he was going to do if he gets reelected, then voting for him really is voting to give up on democracy. And what that says long term about the future of this experiment in democracy, I do not know. But like Hamilton, I shudder to even process him. His name is Hamilton Nolan. His book is called The Hammer: Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor. Hamilton, delighted immensely in this conversation. Thanks for the text. Thanks for your time. I deeply appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Tavis. I had fun.
Good to have you on. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580.